buddy, and welcome to another episode of Meets in Midgard. I am your host, Mac Valentine. McCurdy is my last name, but I don't use that online. But no, now you know. Anyhow, today I have a very special guest with me. I had the privilege of meeting him in person one time some years back at Ritual, and we vibed. And here we are again today, kicking it off. Chase, Clark, how are you doing today?
Hello, I'm pretty good. Just kind of waking up still. I fully intended to be up early and get everything ready. I've been up for like maybe half an hour.
See, I full on was preparing. Like, I was like, Okay, I'm going to like prepare.
I, in all fairness, I prepared last night.
Hold on
Probably
one
should have done that
second
this
here.
morning. Oh,
I So in case people don't know, I am fixing things online right now because I don't know what's going on. So if you hear weird things and echoes and stuff, it's because I'm dumb and I don't know what I'm doing. But let me just.
it's fine. It's technology. It's not an exact science. Trust me, I work in technology.
Okay. All right. We're good. We're good. All right. I have fixed everything. Rachel, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I'm in California, and to Chase, you are in Ohio, correct? Idaho, Ohio,
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. I was wrong just all across the board there. What's in this coffee today?
Just that's a little further north than that. A lot of further north, actually.
Yeah. Um, so let's talk about today's subject really quickly. It is synchronicity, the connection across all heathen paths. And uh, we're going to talk about why it's important, what it is, and the whole bit. So before we start, Chase, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, the path that you walk, and what inspired you to talk about this with me today? So let's talk about you for a second. You are Norse and Celtic combination. Would you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So my path originally started uh with the Norse side of things. Um, as I learned more about my family's culture, that got me interested into looking more into the Celtic side. And originally, the two weren't related until I started seeing, for lack of a better term, rhymes, um, connections and similarities between both pantheons. And the more that I meditated, the more spiritual work I did, I started seeing more signs of a greater connection. Which I mean, I've always been interested in different
Mhm.
cultures. Um, and as I grew up, I started seeing. As I grew up, as I learned more, I started seeing those connections, those repeating patterns, and that's what led me to start looking more into synchronicity and how things align like that, and what why
Mhm.
basically. Um, Now, obviously, I'm not going to sit here and say I have the answer as to why. It's just something to look
Mhm.
into because one of the big things, in my opinion, when it comes to synchronicity, is it is understanding. It helps people with understanding the connections to different cultures. That there is really no difference between anybody. Like if you look into it, everybody has similarities. Everybody can grow. Everybody's culture has similar stories, obviously with a few minor or major, depending on the context,
Mhm.
differences.
That is very good, and that actually is a nice segue into the first question that I have. So let's start with your definition. So how would you describe synchronicity in a spiritual or heathen context?
So it is connections upon the connections with different pantheons and belief systems. In a heathen context, it's seeing your culture or your gods spread out and intermingle with other deities, other pantheons, other belief systems. It's realizing that, and this is kind of going into a little bit of let's uh, the people
Mhm.
exploring, realizing that when you leave your home, you are not alone. Your gods are with you. They are speaking, or maybe even it's a fact that they were already there under different names.
Mhm. So, and that's a good point. As, Odin talks about in the Havamal to travel. It's a way of finding knowledge, and you turn that knowledge into wisdom. And when you travel, of course, you are exposing yourself to other cultures, other people, and such. And instead of keeping it on that like surface level, if you dig deep and you start looking into the different cultures and the different aspects of their faith, that then I think you start finding all these similarities. Of, what Norse heathenry has as far as heathen culture is concerned. Would you find that to be somewhat
Yeah,
accurate?
that's I'd say that is fairly accurate.
Hmm. So you're saying Odin would have like a Zeus equivalent in. Uh,
Yes. So one of the other things when it comes to synchronicity is also noticing not everything has a one-to-one
mhm,
counterpart. Um, One of the big things, just with the example you just gave with Odin and uh, Greek mythology or the Hellenistic pantheon, Odin is actually more often than not equated with
oh,
Hermes,
okay.
being a messenger, a psychopomp, a uh,
Hmm.
traveler.
Hmm.
Obviously, there's a few differences there because Hermes is also seen as a god of theft and medicine, which not really a thing with Odin, at least not the theft thing.
Well, oh, there might be a few stories here and there.
Right?
Reclaiming the meat of poetry, that was a heist.
Yeah.
um, but okay, yeah, and which is good. And see, this is something like for me, this whole time because I'm not so familiar with other pantheons, or something like that would be like, oh, I always thought Odin would be closer related to Zeus. I don't, so this is something like for me personally, I'd be like, I need to look into this and maybe chat with you some more offline about it and learn some more and get that. So that's really good insight for me. I would never have thought of that, of equating him with that based on personality rather than station.
Mm, Um, I believe there is actually a lot more connection when it comes to Zeus because some people do see Tyr as a sky father.
Mm,
Um, and then obviously with the whole thunder, there's the connection with Thor. But that goes back to there's some similarities, but there's also differences, and sometimes more than more than one. It's more than one-to-one thing. Like with Zeus, it's 1 to 2.
mm, I see what you're saying. But there are um, basic like characteristics and elements where that align. So it could be um, that Odin would. could represent um, pieces of different uh,
Exactly.
gods rather than one whole as a whole.
Exactly.
But a lot of these themes of characteristics for the gods are similar in different paths of heathenry
Yeah.
as well. Okay, right on. That's good. Wow, my brain is now aligning with everything. so, so Chase, have you personally ever experienced a moment in your path where something felt too aligned to be coincidence? Something that felt like weird or fate calling out, pantheons and parallels.
Yeah. Um. So one of the things that I see a lot, generally speaking, is dogs, wolves, coyotes, canines in general.
Hmm.
And that is a reoccurring symbol in belief systems all over the world. Like, uh, like Ayla just said here in the comments, different beings operating in different ecosystems.
Hmm.
All those ecosystems usually have some kind of dog. Um, and I've always felt like the dogs are following or guiding me down a big road that goes all over the world to all these different cultures.
Hmm. What sparked your interest? I'm just curious. This wasn't one of my questions, but what sparked your interest to explore the similarities between Norse heathenry and then other heathen faiths?
Um, Generally speaking, it kind of started with it started with cryptids.
Okay. Oh,
it
good.
it didn't it didn't start spiritually at all. It started with uh like I said, cryptids, monsters from around the world, from different cultures, from different beliefs. I started noticing patterns showing up there. You know, if you just the first thing that comes to mind, if you look up Bigfoot, there's a big there's a big ape there's an ape with big feet all over, at some point somebody's seen somewhere in the world.
Hmm.
So it was my interest in that, and then when I started looking more into heathenry and heathen beliefs, I started noticing the same kind of similarities, and I'm realizing that I'm equating gods with Bigfoot, but that's what kind of sparked that to grow more.
Okay. That is really cool. Um, and I think it's awesome we could find that kind of inspiration in just different facets of our life. And it was cryptids for you. I'm a big fan of cryptids. We might have to talk later on about such things. I am all about it. Um, correct. I just want to hit some of the comments as well. You touch on Ayla's, and one point that she makes there is because they are different beings operating in different ecosystems. We're talking about like the Norse pantheon with others. Um, so they're not in that sense because they are their own ecosystems. There's not going to always be that, like you said earlier, one-on-one equivalent. Um, it's a mixture of different personalities and qualities. And Sanford says that deities present themselves as the mortal can comprehend them. The closer to the closer the culture, the more connections are found. Mm,
Yeah. Um,
spot on.
yeah. So one of the actually going off of what Sanford was saying there,
Hmm.
um, one of the reoccurring motifs you'll see is some kind of creature guarding the underworld. 9 times out of 10, it's a dog.
Hmm.
Back to dogs. However, I want to say it's either Mayan or Aztec. I can't remember which one. The guardian of the underworld is a large bat called Camazotz.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
That's kind of cool. Something a little different, spice things up.
pretty much.
So you practice a combination of Celtic and Norse heathenry, and in your practice, what reoccurring themes or symbols do you see um, that? those two have that show up in the Norse heathenry. Well, obviously Norse heathenry is going to have its thing, but what elements from the Celtic are you showing? Are do you see showing up in Norse heathenry? And they're very much, I'd say, almost like sister faiths in a lot of ways. If you would think that.
Yeah, yeah, kind of. Uh, again, hey, look, there goes my train of thought. Uh,
Yeah.
I,
So in your practice, like what parts of the Celtic um, portions of that do you see that are showing up in the Norse heathenry? You're able to kind of combine the two and work with that and make it yours. But if you were separating them out, what parts of the Celtic faith are showing up in the Norse heathen faith?
hmm. So there's the. Huh, this is a harder question than I thought it would be. Well, from a lot of this, well, a lot of the similarities that I tend to see are not only with there being multiple tribes of gods with the Aesir, the Vanir, and
Mhm,
then the uh, mm, Celtic has the Tuatha De Danann, which I'm fairly certain I said wrong. Uh,
mhm,
the Filbrog, and that one I completely messed up because I felt my tongue go wrong. And then you also have the, I suppose you'd call them the more monstrous god tribes, kind of, depending on
mhm.
the depiction of the Fomorians, because some people do. There really is some people don't see that much of a difference between like the Fomorians and the Tuatha De Danann. I've heard both things.
Really quickly, I don't know a lot about the Celtic pantheon, so explain it to me like I'm a child, because I literally do not know anything about the Celtic pantheon. So
Fair enough, and
don't worry about
I'm
like over explaining or anything. I totally need that.
I'm I'm still learning, so I don't necessarily have all the details straight.
Okay,
Uh,
okay, that's fine.
honestly, Ayla would be a better person to kind of explain it than I would. Um,
I'm learning. I'm learning. But well, so let's start with like a basic kind of outline. So in Norse heathenry, you have like the pursuit of knowledge and knowledge turning into to turn that knowledge into wisdom, and it's like a never-ending journey. You constantly want to
yeah.
do that. Is there something similar to that in the Celtic realm?
So so one of the things when it comes to the Celtic path that I follow,
Hmm.
it's there is that pursuit of knowledge that you were talking about, but it not in a lot of stuff I've read. Again, I am by and afar no means an expert. I'm still learning
Hmm.
myself. Generally speaking, when it comes to the Celtic belief that I've found, the Celtic path I've found myself on is the idea of family and finding home. Um,
Is that?
because the oh,
Oh no, I was gonna say, and I'll let you finish that thought, and then I'll jump to mine.
because one of the things with Tuatha De Danann, they are a people that, at least from what I've read and understand, and I could be wrong, and if I am wrong, correct me. He says, looking at the comments, waiting for Ayla to correct him. uh, they came to Ireland from, well, from what I understand, nobody actually knows where they came from. They came
Hmm.
looking for a home, and then from there is actually an instance of another synchronicity in a story with the Tuatha De Danann and the Firbolg, who are very similar to the Jotun.
Mm.
Um, there was I want to say a Firbolg king who's was told that his grandson would overthrow him, which is also a connection to Greek myth and myths. Generally speaking, um, thank you, Ayla. So the Tuatha De Danann came from the east.
The
So
East.
yep. Uh,
They were probably Russians. I'm kidding. The Rus. I'm kidding.
that's
or
very possible.
or yeah, could be the. Who knows?
Um,
I don't know.
yeah,
Just throwing it out there.
it's not a it's not an impossible thought when you think about it. Um, I yep, I completely lost my train of thought again.
I do this all the time. So yeah, but let's hit some of the comments while we're on this because we were talking about like the pursuit of knowledge and is that a Celtic thing? And we're going into uh, we're kind of branching out, but there's some of the things here I cannot even want to try to pronounce some of these Celtic things that Ayla is saying, so I'm not going to. But animism is one of the core, I think, because a core belief in between the two, like
Oh yeah,
Celtic and the Norse, with everything having a spirit and an existence, a consciousness to a degree. Um, and uh, you had mentioned something, and I was going to say something about it, and now I totally forgot. So I'm going to watch this back, and then I'm going to go back to it and be like, "Hey, Chase, remember what we were talking about? I remember what I was going to say." So you have found similarities, obviously, which has caused you to, embrace a Celtic, uh, or to start to branch out a little bit from the Norse path to include some Celtic threads into your path. Is that correct?
yes,
Okay, right on. So for you, you're like, I'm just starting out on this, and I'm going to see where it goes.
yep. I mean, I've been studying it for about I want to say 2 3 years now. I need to get better at doing it.
So, but this is a really good point because now it's like a lot of people go into Norse heathenry or they're converting from Christianity or something else into Norse heathenry, and they think like this must be the end all, this must be the it, this must be the thing, you know. But um, you are basically living and saying like a living example of this and saying it doesn't have to be, you know what makes that important that you can, for you personally, to say, yes, Norse heathenry fulfills me in this way, but now I want more, or I didn't know I needed more until I saw this, or it is possible to include other things in my practice. I don't even know if that was a question.
Oh, I actually I do have an
Okay,
answer for
good,
you though.
good.
Um, so when I started following the Norse path, my specific patron is Odin, and he's always spoke to me and encouraged me to learn more about anything that I can. So I feel that in learning more about my Celtic side and about all these other cultures, I'm still honoring Odin.
hmm And let's hit some of these comments too, because I think that they're just really great on there. Um, and some of them got buried, so I'm gonna go back to them on my side where I can kind of see them. Because the comments are going 100 miles an hour here. So animism. Um, so Ayla said that the Druids were scholars. Um, so yeah, scholars, which would be the Sanfords of the Celts, because Sanford is the scholar of scholars that I know. But yeah, so that's an example of the pursuit of knowledge. Um, and then Sanford says they were anthropologically from the Yam Yamnayan
Yamnayan.
culture, a branch off the Balto-Slavic migration. Rachel says both believe in gifting the land spirits. That's very true. Yes.
that's actually a thing that you will see in cultures all over the world. Um, because again, with synchronicity, every culture will honor the land spirits. They call them different names, whether that be Landsvitur, Fae, Loa, yokai, kind of. Um, Actually, no, not kind of, just yokai, because some are just seen as gods. Uh, and I can't think of another name for another. I can't think of a fourth synonym.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this. Ayla says on here the most Celtic faith thing on earth. They don't want you to speak about them. So like in Norse heathenry, the Landvater, we honor them, and like I moved into a new house. I did a whole thing to honor them and the whole bit. And when I go traveling or if I go places, I will honor them where I'm at. And it seems like the Celtic Fae, in that sense, are more secretive and hush-like, so we wouldn't want to like talk
Yeah,
about them openly and publicly. It's more of a private practice kind of a deal.
yeah, kind of. Um, they don't like being talked
Hmm.
about. Uh, like Ayla was saying, unless there's very few people I've noticed. But yeah, the whole uh, forgetting what we're saying as we're trying to talk about them, that's a very Fae thing. And if I'm being honest, I think there's a specific kind of Fae in my house ever since I moved in,
Wow.
because my cats will just stare at a wall. It's the same wall, and it's all three cats.
Okay, you and I are going to have another talk about that. You and I are going to have like a crazy conversation after this because my house is doing the same thing. We're going to talk cryptids. We're going to talk haunted houses. We're going to do all kinds of stuff. Um, so, and maybe, just maybe, because we are talking about uh, aspects of the Celtic faith now, the Celtic Fae, are scrambling our brains, so we don't, so we're not honing in on them.
Right?
For you personally, you were following the Norse heathen path, and you saw these strands of from the Celtic, then you were like, that that is a vibe for me. That is a vibe. And yeah,
Yeah.
we need to call Ayla as well. I'm gonna bring them all in later on. So you, Sanford, and Ayla, we're all gonna have a conversation. So you saw these strands from another faith, and you brought them in. They vibed with you. And a lot of people don't really step out of a pantheon once they're in, but you decided to.
Yeah. Um, I I do think I know why a lot of people don't
Hmm.
do that. Um, so I think the reason why a lot of people tend to just stick with one faith, not only because they feel the connection to it, I do think there is a bit of fear of
Os-
ostrich.
Ostracizing.
Heh, yes, of
Mm.
their peers, because there's some people who believe no, this is only it. But I I'm incredibly lucky in the fact that I know the people who taught me about Norse paganism are so open minded, and they are loving the fact that I'm looking into
Mhm.
other stuff. So if you this is kind of anybody out there who's worried about looking into other pantheons and learning, don't be. There is Learning is never the wrong answer.
Ma-
Growing yourself is never wrong.
I'm going to quote you on that. Learning is never the wrong answer. That is so good, and that is so right, and it is so on point with um, Norse the Norse heathenry. And I'm sure if I looked outside of that, I would find that that's common in other faiths as well, other heathen faiths. Like that's another
Yeah.
common thread um, there. So why? So you saw this, you did it in the whole bit. Why was it important to you to basically say to branch out a little bit and say, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, um, did you feel like it was necessary to do so, or is it like icing on the cake? You didn't really need it, but it's nice to have.
It kind of felt like it was something that was nice to
Mhm,
have. So part of what got me to studying Celtic uh, theology and faith not only was my
mhm,
ancestry. Um, on my father's side, I'm Irish, so I just wanted to learn more about the culture there, and it ballooned into the Celtic. A lot of my faith comes from mundane stuff as I learn more about it, um, and it felt right to follow both
mhm.
paths.
And do you see yourself expanding more possibly?
Yeah. Um, I don't see myself doing actual rituals for some of the other stuff that I've
Mhm.
studied, uh, but I have no intention, and I will not be stop. I will not stop learning anytime soon.
So I'm totally going off script here. Usually I stick with the script on the questions, but this is such an interesting topic for me. So personally, like you're fortunate to be able to be surrounded by friends of the same faith that are accepting of this. Um, to branch out and include other uh, pantheons as well. Um, I'm not sure on your experiences, but have you come across any resistance from that from anybody?
Not
Mhm,
me personally, but I have heard of a coworker of mine who has run into that kind of issue. They were a what was it? Of course, with that their particular case, they were a Christian who was looking into pagan stuff, which that just kind of
mhm.
didn't fly with them. So I talked with them, uh, and then I don't really know what happened to them after that. They kind of
Maybe their
haven't talked to
god
them in a
maybe
while.
their god took
Should check
them.
in with them.
I'm kidding. Just kidding. I'm just kidding, everybody. Um, I remember what I was gonna say. So, sticking to one faith and one pantheon and saying, "This is it. This is the end all," I think is a very Christian thing, a Christian concept in the fact that this is the one true path and the one true way. And there's nothing like that in Norse heathenry that even implies that, says that, or and it has anything to do with that. But a lot of people, when they convert, already have that mindset because that's that's what they're trained to do.
Exactly.
And in that aspect, they say, "Okay, I went from Christianity, now I'm Norse heathen. This is it." And it's like putting these blinders on and just going without looking outside at the world around them. Like for you, you found something else that can enrich your life more, and enrich your own spiritual path more. And just think of like what it could do for others if they opened up and were like, "Hey, there's some other stuff here that I kind of like. I think I'll throw it in." You know. Sanford says traditional monotheistic faiths have an issue with that. I've heard multiple excommunications from delving into other aspects of faith. However, within the original tenets of Christianity, it allows for more eclectic viewpoint. And Ayla makes a great point here too. She says none of our ancestors were that way. There were even stories of the pagan Romans trying to bribe Celtic gods with better offerings and temples for a victory in battle with them. And that is a really good point. And I want to talk about this for a little bit. Even in our own faith, we acknowledge other gods. It's not just we're acknowledging the Norse pantheon. Which gods do you recognize outside of the Norse pantheon?
I got a list.
But bring some of them up and then tell me why and how they resonate with you.
So
Mhm.
outside of the Norse pantheon, uh, I mostly work with, like I said, Celtic deities. The main Celtic deity that I work with is the
Okay.
Dagda. He's essentially the way I've always seen him, uh, the way he's always presented himself to me, and the energy I've always got from him is a
Okay.
grandfather. He is
No,
a
I don't
for.
know anything
Oh,
about
go
this
ahead.
deity, so explain away.
He's seen as a fertility god, but he is also, again, my I believe the term is UPG is seeing him as a
Hmm.
provider. He one of his symbols is a cauldron that can feed everybody no matter what, and that along with his club and his harp, those are his three main symbols. He's mm, like I said, I've always seen him as a grandfather figure just because of how he's presented himself. He's honestly a lot of his physical descriptions is like Thor. What I suppose the best way to put it is like a slightly
Mm.
fatter version of Thor.
Go on. Kidding.
Well, I mean it is said that he carries two. It is said that he carries two clubs, one on his shoulder and the other one dragon, and he is a fertility god, and he does wear a kilt. So you know
I wear kilts too.
that.
I I I think I'm starting to crush on this guy. No, I'm kidding. So how did he
uh,
resonate with you? Like, what was it that drew you to him?
so another term for the Dagda is the good god, um, and it's just he is the type of god that it's just anytime that I've done anything or questioned anything, he'll make his presence known, and it's always just joy. Like he's just always it's a good vibe, no matter what. It's protection, and it's always something that the feeling that I get from him is the kind of feeling that I like to give others, so that others know that I'm a safe person no matter what. If you need help, let me know. If you don't feel safe, I'll do what I can to protect you. He is a provider, which again I'd love to do more. It's just the idea that I'm here, I'm going to do what I can to help everybody else.
That's good. And how does that tie into your Norse path? Providing, obviously, like you said, there were it was kin, and like the tribal kin thing, and you provide for them, which is also, I think very Norse thing as well. But how does that relate to you as far as like the Norse stuff goes?
So specifically when it comes to the Dagda, I don't have a lot of connection with the Norse, but the biggest one being is with Odin again as a somebody who wants to learn so that I can use what I learned to help protect and make people happy. So there it's less of a synchronicity and more of finding a
Mm.
balance between the two things.
So did you find, and again, I'm just, yeah, branching at her. I'm not even sticking to the script on this one. I will get back to it though, I promise. Did you find something was lacking in your path path with Norse heathenry that kind of wanted you to branch out? Or was it more of a natural kind of, I'm good and now I'm it's almost like a sprinkled of, I'm good and now there's more.
Yeah, I never felt like anything was lacking when I was just a Norse heathen.
Mhm.
It felt like a natural progression to grow, to learn more, and to start with my ancestry.
Mhm. Why do you think it's important though to find these common things in the pagan or heathen communities?
Because it it helps people just learn more about each other. Like I think I kind of touched on it a bit earlier. The more you understand about other heathen paths, the more you realize that they're so similar.
Hmm.
Um, and then there's at least one instance that I know off the top of my head of a Celtic goddess showing up in two other religious contexts. That being Bridget. The Celtic belief, she's, oh no, can't I remember? She's a craftsman goddess. She's a light goddess. I want to say either summer or autumn. I'm pretty sure summer. Um, but she actually also shows up in Christianity as a saint, and even in voodoo belief as Mama Bridget.
Mm,
So there's instances of like that where that's admittedly something a little bit different than synchronicity. That's two
hmm.
things a little bit different than synchronicity, but the themes are still there. She's still very similar to what she was as a Celtic goddess.
So, and one of my core beliefs is that heathenry and or heathenry itself is was like science for the early cultures, in a way of explaining things that were unexplainable, and that's why it aligns so much with why I think there's so much like Norse heathenry is like a very scientific faith. The more you learn, the more you change your train of thought, and um, unlike the Abrahamic faiths where it's like it's written in stone, that's it. This is the whole thing. So I think that's something that a lot of heathen and pagan faiths have in common is like it's their way of explaining the world and how we fit into
Yeah.
it. So, given that idea, have you seen a lot of um, division? Like here in California, the it's different. It's just different here. But do you see a division within heathen communities based on the paths that people follow?
Not again, not in my personal experience.
Mm,
A, a lot of I'm again real lucky, and a lot of the heathens I know are open minded and willing to listen and accept almost anything.
mhm. So when you gather for rituals and stuff, how does that go? Like, are
Well,
you? Go ahead.
it depends on what we're doing.
Okay.
So for just for an example, if we're doing something for a Norse god, we will do everything Norse. If we're doing something Celtic, we will do Celtic path. There are a few times where they will overlap and will honor both pantheons. The biggest ones there I can think of being Midsummer, um, and a list of more things. I don't know why my brain's not working, and I apologize.
It's the phase. They're doing this, but which brings up a point though. So do you feel you're lucky? Like if you're fortunate to surround yourself with that type of heathen community. So for you, if you there was a Celtic rite or ritual coming up, you wouldn't hesitate to invite your friends outside of the pantheon, outside of that path, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd be more than happy to have as many people show up as I can because it goes back to, well, not only my devotion to Dagda, but the Norse idea of Firth.
Hmm.
Just
So that is something that I think ties a lot of people together in the heathen faith. Um, let's talk about. like tying in like more modern concepts, like Wiccan or anything like outside of that. I know Wicca has branched off a little bit, but and it's often a starting point for a lot of Norse heathens to start off as Wiccan as well. What are your thoughts on incorporating newer strands like Wicca into the Norse?
I I suppose I personally don't see too much of an issue with it as long as anybody who's part of the newer faith, newer ideologies see, understand, and respect that some of the stuff that is happening is a lot older than they realize. And they don't try. My biggest thing is if you are invited to an event and you want to participate, is and you want to participate and you want to add part of your belief to it, ask whoever's running it if it's okay.
Mhm.
And if they say no, first of all, they better have a good reason. Second of all, listen to them because it's you. Yes, we can incorporate we can incorporate almost anything, but certain events, certain rituals are for specific uh, deities or beings, and sometimes they don't like to share.
That is a very good observation and a very good point. So just because, let's say, we're venerating Tyr, doesn't mean like someone else coming in and say, "Oh, well, I'm going to throw my god in there too," or whatever. It's like, no, this is specifically Tyr, and this ritual is specifically for this god, and please respect that. So I think that's important coming into other um like for you when you're able to have an eclectic group of heathens come together to respect the intent of that ritual or that purpose. It brings up a point like when um for Thanksgiving when my we'd all gather around the table and stuff, and my grandma would open with a prayer. you know she's praying to her god, and I'm sitting there and my son and I are like praying to our gods. But we're not disrupting the process. That's her thing, her faith, and we're
Right,
respecting that.
and that's a little that's different than what I was saying. A little different, not that much.
Okay,
It's see that's a holiday
right.
where there's always like a minor thing with holidays to honor your gods,
Mm,
and sometimes it's a major thing. So, in my opinion, when it comes to a holiday, like while your grandma's praying, you also pray to your gods. That's not that I personally don't see that as disrespectful. That's just you honoring your gods.
mhm.
That that's different than doing a specific ritual towards a god,
Okay.
if that
Okay.
makes sense.
Yes, there is a difference, and you are correct. Absolutely. So if you're going to a specific ritual to honor Tyr, don't bring any other gods around. I'm just kidding. But no, but go in with the respect that that's what that is for.
Yeah.
That's that's for. um, heathen, heathen, heathen Sanford. San, Sanford makes a great point that Wicca is the marijuana heathenry. It is a gateway. I think a lot of people go into it and they're like, oh, but wait, there's more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which I mean, it also tends to lead into exactly what I do with synchronicity.
talk about that a little bit. You, I'm sorry, I just jumped in. I meant thought that looked like you were going to say something, but gateways. Do you see yourself expanding outside of Celtic pantheons?
Yeah. I've done it a little bit already. Um, I have done some work with Greek deities, and I've also done some research into, like I said, other pantheons and other deities.
Hmm.
Um, One of the things that I was actually really lucky recently, and not necessarily take a part of, but at least witness, is actually a Mayan ritual.
Oh wow, I bet that was awesome.
Yeah, uh, it's
Hmm.
just kind of a protection thing, I think, slash a show, because it was part of a tour I was doing, so I don't know how accurate it was, but kind of seeing the way he was moving and using the smoke, I saw similarities in Norse bloat, and it's also just a common thing that I've learned recently. It's a common thing in most cultures to honor the four cardinal directions when you're doing the ritual.
Hmm. Do you think it's important to find these things we have in common with other faiths?
Absolutely. Um, it just goes back to getting a little bit hippie here, but it just goes back to understanding each other and realizing that we're all the same.
Hmm.
And actually, speaking about Mayan stuff, there is another thing that I noticed down there that is a common symbol apparently, and that is the half. I don't know how you can see that, but the half skull,
Yeah,
just like Freya
yeah,
or Hell.
hell yeah.
I don't know why I said Freya. She's gonna be mad at me for that.
It's the Celtic phase. I'm blaming them today. There are a lot of yeah, and you bring up a very important thing there. I think like there's a lot of symbolism across different paths that are common
Yeah.
um, threads.
Um. Oh yeah. One of the biggest things that you will see in almost every culture is a sacred tree,
Mm,
or a tree that connects the worlds. Um, in my notes, I have the name of it somewhere, I swear.
yeah, I know for the Norse we have Yggdrasil,
Oh,
and
and
Celtic you have
I don't remember the name of the tree. I should have written that one down.
that's fine. But you're right though. I know in other faiths there are a lot
Yeah.
of uh, trees, like
Oh
world
yeah.
trees in other faiths. Why why is it important for us to find common ground with other heathen faiths? And I mean, why not just stick to your own thing, you know? I'm just being an ass here, but I'm just
Um,
so some people might really be like, no, 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 just stick to your thing, you know?
I mean, my thing in that is, where's the fun in not learning and not finding similarities?
Mm,
It's sticking to one faith is, there's nothing wrong with it, I guess. Well, I mean, there's not even, I guess, there's just nothing wrong with it. It's just when you get to be dogmatic, it becomes an issue.
mm.
There's Life's too short to own the world. I feel it's important to study other faiths so you can learn and grow.
So you personally have not experienced any um like a resistance or anything to from your friends or anything to explore outside. What would you say to someone that is experiencing this resistance from the any community when they're trying to expand and branch out?
If a community is not letting you grow, it's not the right community for you.
Mm, mm,
There's there is no reason that you should not be allowed to learn and grow, and nobody should stop you or make you feel less than for wanting to learn. Anybody who does is a coward, and their opinion should not hurt me.
What why is it? Because we have community is so important in North heathenry. You have your kin, your community, um, and you personally are able to fit into a community that is probably a little more broad and accepting and still maintain community. I don't think a lot of people have that, you know?
That's true. And I I'd like to think I don't take it for granted because I've gotten unbelievably lucky, especially with or finding an open minded community with where I live in Wisconsin. Because in my town alone, there's like 5 churches.
Oh, wow.
So finding a group of open minded people has been unbelievably lucky, and I am so grateful for it.
Mhm.
And I would love to be able to help people find a place to be accepted if they're having trouble with it.
Maybe that's something we could start, like a network of like, hey, or just a chat or something later on. People are being like, yeah, I'm Norse, but, and then let's like just go out and talk about it and learn. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah,
I myself personally have not expanded outside of the Norse path, but you got me. This conversation with you has really got me thinking to start looking around. I've just been so. I'm a Taurus. I'm a creature of habit. I create a pattern and I stay with it because if I stray from it, it's chaos. But
right.
it doesn't mean I'm closed-minded to anything, like I'm still open to it. But now I'm thinking like, wow, what else do I not know that I want to know or, why so heathen communities, I totally have abandoned all the questions. I hope you realize that.
Yep.
So we're talking good stuff though. I am so happy about this. Um because it's really striking with me. It's really striking a chord with me personally to be to want to enrich my life and enrich my path and my personal experience that I have. Um, what would you say to someone just starting out in Norse heathenry, uh, or as far as synchronicity goes? Like, um, like don't shut yourself off to other possibilities, or whatever. What
Yeah.
would you say to a newbie?
So to anybody just finding their path, if you are interested in other pantheons, don't be afraid to look into it. However, focus on one at a time. Because if you try to do what I did when I first started learning about other pantheons and try to do umpteen million at once, you will get burnt out, and all of a sudden you won't be doing any kind of spiritual stuff, and you'll start feeling like a bad pagan,
Hmm.
which I've run into personally. Don't don't overdo it. Focus on one at a time, and when you feel like you have a pretty good understanding of one path, and if you still want to go and explore another path and explore more synchronicities, go ahead, because that's another thing that not everybody. I'm also doing the aliens thing. I realize that. Uh,
Um, Sanford's making a personal reflection on you, but we'll get back to Sanford's comment. But just continue your thought.
um,
So a newbie starting out, yeah.
but yeah, it's because maybe the reason why you want to look into other pantheons is because you're just not sure about what path you want to
Hmm.
follow. I'm fully aware not everybody is like me, where they like the idea of looking into other pantheons, praying to other gods, having multiple deities and doctrine that you have to follow, which is another thing that we can get into when I'm done with
Okay.
this thought. Uh, you may not actually, you may just be curious about these other pantheons and want to learn more. Um, Maybe Norse is just the right spiritual path for you to follow, but academically, you just want to learn more about other cultures. Make sure you have an understanding of the first path that you find before you start following another one.
Mm. Basically, create your foundation first, and then build your house.
Yep,
Deities and doctrine and dogma. Let's talk about that.
yep. So it's not very often that a Norse, or well, not even Norse, that a heathen path will have do's and don'ts other than the basics of. Can I
You can
swear?
swear, yeah.
Other than the basics of don't be an asshole.
Right.
Generally speaking, if you follow that one doctrine, most heathen paths will have that, and you're fine. But there are some that have specifics. Make sure you know those before you even consider following another path, and make sure none of them contradict.
Mm. You know,
I don't think there's very many. I don't think there's very many that do. But again, I am not an expert.
so I think you're making a really good point here, and I just want to expand on that. Is when you are following a heathen path, make sure it vibes with you, that it aligns. And if you are expanding out, make sure all that aligns as well. Um, let's say there's a contradiction of something that's not setting right. Um, it doesn't mean you abandon the entire part of it. That part you want to study it and see, why isn't this aligning? Is it a moral thing? Is it just not a vibe thing with me? Like if we're talking, like, obviously we don't do human sacrifices anymore, so that wouldn't align. It's not a thing,
Right.
but it doesn't mean you abandon the entire belief system. You know.
Exactly. And that actually speaks to, I think, and Sanford, correct me if I'm wrong here, that speaks to hermeneutics,
Hmm.
where what you believed way back when, or what your ancestors believed, like with human sacrifice, obviously it was okay back then, depending on the context, I guess. I suppose. Anyway, nowadays, not
Right.
okay. So you find ways to honor the past with modern ideology. I believe that's hermeneutics.
It's a part of it, yeah, I'd say. One thing, but that I have adapted for is the use of blood. So, and I learned this recently from another meets in Midgard that I did with Colby and Will, was the water to replace blood, because it is in essence Emir's blood, which is Jotun blood, and so you're still using like a life force in that, rather than just going to. I've never killed an animal for sacrifice or anything. I'm just using this as an example, but rather than killing an animal for its blood for a ritual or anything, or if you're going to, like, your runes, if you're going to consecrate them, you don't have to use blood. You can use water, which is in essence Jotun blood. That's an adaptation. Um, so something like, sacrificing animals and such, that doesn't align with me. So now I found something that does. You
Mhm.
know, being that we're not even using the questions I prepared, I do want to hit really quickly. Yeah, this is so true. Sanford said it's common with Chase Clark. He brings out the autistic nature in all individuals. Raven Crook can confirm good times
Yeah.
around the fire. So yeah, this is I'm going with it because this is just the vibe and the energy I'm getting from you, and it's working. I'm loving it.
Yeah.
So the thing, one thing that popped in my brain that I really want to kind of touch on is, and I don't want to get political or anything, but we are in kind of a real crazy place where everything is divided. Like you're for this or against this and blah blah blah, and it's created all these separate, like cells, uh, and it prevents us from unifying, from finding common factors with other people, other faiths, and the whole bit. Have you seen that play out in the heathen community as well? Almost like an infection, instead of unifying people, it's causing division.
Not a lot, but I have seen I have seen how it has affected some
Hmm.
communities. Um, and it does kind of go back to the the topic of this episode of synchronicity, of why I believe again it's so important, because it is allowing you to look into more. Again, it's allowing you to look into more cultures. It's allowing you to understand how people can see other things.
Hmm.
It's realizing that again, it doesn't matter that some of these stories are centuries and centuries years old. People are still telling them, and the Japanese story of Izanami and Izanagi is almost identical to the Greek story of Orpheus and Eurydice.
Mm,
That it's just different names, but we're all the same people. And it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter. Nothing about nothing but your personality matters.
mhm,
Nothing about but the way you look at the world matters. Everybody has some connection, because in any faith, any pantheon, any belief, give me 2 or 3 days and I could probably find you at least one story that aligns in any pantheon.
mhm. I can see you're like passionate about this. Um, was there an experience you had or something that really brought this to light to you that you're like, I want to voice this. I want to talk about it?
Not really. It's just something that I feel like a lot of people, when they talk about different beliefs, just kind of brush over the similarities. But
Hmm.
I've it's in my personal opinion, you can't ignore similarities. You can't ignore what makes people the same. And because all anybody ever wants to do is fight and argue about what's different. They don't even want to acknowledge the similarities. They don't want to acknowledge that, yeah,
That is a
these
really
name
good point. We are, and I don't know if this is human nature or it's just our conditioning nowadays, is to find the things that are different and make a stand on it, rather than finding the things that are the same and being like, Look, 98% of what we feel, what we're seeing is the same. And you're going to make a stand on this 2%? you know, it's
exactly.
ridiculous, you know?
It's just it, religion in any context is the best way to bring people together or to get them to try to kill each other.
Hmm.
Um, but once you find, again, back, you just I feel like I'm repeating
No, keep
myself,
on.
but just finding these connections It can allow people to grow, and I hope get past their knee jerk reactions or the he said, she said, or any of that, realizing that at the end of the day, we're all human.
Mm,
And even our gods have traveled the world and used different names. Why would I want to go against why would I want to go against a culture that my god helped under a different name?
mm. Man, that is like it's this bridge, this unspoken bridge of humanity that people just ignore to prove a point or to prove their narrative, ignoring all the things that we have in common. And to dehumanize people that don't align with you. It's that.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
wrong.
Do you have things in common with Christians that you find aligns with you personally?
I wouldn't I wouldn't say no, but I can't think of any off the top of my head.
See, for me, like there are Christian concepts I admire, like and align with things like feeding the poor, helping the hungry, the homeless, you know, the the sinners um, are like the sex workers and blah blah blah. Well, but to me, that's not a sin. It's well, sin doesn't exist in
Right.
heathenry, but so there are some things that I'm like, yes, and in a way, it transfers into heathenry to where it's like, all right, I'm going to be a good host when someone comes over. They're going to have food, dry clothes, a warm towel to wipe their hands, that whole bit. So in some of those things it aligns, and then there are some things that I think are just absolutely crazy and shouldn't exist in the modern world. But
Right.
but there are things from I think from a lot of different faiths that even I've abandoned that I think I still carry with me that are valid.
Yeah, it's every experience, and this is less about spiritually, this is just kind of a point that I've always seen. There's no experience in your life that's a bad experience. You learn and grow from everything you've done and everything you've experienced. It turns you into who you are, and you are never done growing. You are never done learning.
Hmm.
I my another personal quote, and I don't know if I heard this from somewhere else, but it's just something that's always stuck in my head. As soon as somebody stops learning, they failed.
Hmm. Well, there's no path forward. You've stopped.
Yeah,
That's it. You're done. So yeah, definitely. I, I it's your energy. I did not stick to any of the script. I think I did like two questions off of it, but I just want to pick your brain so much that I'm like, I can't do
yeah,
that. I would like to definitely have a chat with you again and maybe bring like Sanford and Ayla in on it as well. And I really want to dive into this. I want to be able to um, find the things that unify heathen communities. What are the things we have in common, and why is that unity? Why is that
oh,
important nowadays? How is it relevant? Why is it important? Those are things we need.
right.
Why is it? Why?
And I honest,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
oh, you were asking me a question. I
Oh no, no,
misunderstood.
no,
Sorry.
no. I was gonna say, like personally for you, why is it important to um, have that uh, bond with people outside of the heathen faith? Like, what does it do for you, and what does it do for the community?
I, like I said, it allows me to learn. It allows me to grow. It allows me to
Mhm.
um, it allow it allows me to learn, grow, so I can teach and continue to help out in any way I can.
Mhm.
Um, being close.
No,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just gonna say, being close-minded and not wanting to learn doesn't really that doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't fix anything. If there's anything wrong, they don't know about it. You don't grow if you do not communicate.
Right. So, oh, shoot. Oh, shit. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry, Chase, that I did not stick to any of the questions.
It's all right.
So I'm going to do a part two with you, and we will get to the questions for sure. But I just got, I find this fascinating because it's not something I'd considered of moving outside of the heathen or the Norse pantheon anyway. And so for me, it's um, enlightening. And now my brain is like, well, what else is out there? um, I don't think I could, and this is probably with you too, not abandon the heathen path, but just add to
Yeah, it's
it.
again,
um,
it's all just learning and growing.
so it is important for the heathen communities nowadays, I think, to really find that common, the things we have in common and stick together. Um, I think there's a rise of, and this is not a political thing. This is not a political thing, people. This is not political. There's a rise of Christian nationality that I think really is threatening anyone who is not Christian. And so that being said, there is a threat to the heathen community. And I think that it's important now for heathens, regardless of pantheon, to find the things that we have in common and to work together to be able to preserve our right to practice our faith.
Absolutely.
So it's like, let's start branching out and looking. Like, I've never done that. So I'm going to start. I'm just going to be like, hey, this is my beliefs. This is where I am. This is why it's important to me. Find someone else and say, man, look at how much we have in common, you know?
Right. And I mean, I'm open to anybody messaging me for questions about anything, and I will do my damnedest to answer them.
Mhm. I want to give a plug really quickly. You said you have a YouTube channel where you stream your gaming online.
That's a very, that's a very, very different side of me.
Which is fine, but anyone, if you're going to message Chase, please ask him about his gaming channel as well, because I haven't seen it personally. I'm going to, but me knowing who you are, Chase, I'm sure it is highly entertaining. We get to see you outside of the whole religious aspect.
Right.
So you have, inside the heathen community, you have, um, you start off with Norse, you're embracing Celtic. How does that affect your role, if any, that you had inside of there? Is it expanding it? Is it in any way deterring you or cutting you off from certain rituals, or is it, you know?
It's it's kind of expanded it a bit because I've had situations where people have asked me to help out with Celtic rituals. I keep saying Sanford's asked me to help out with Celtic rituals.
Mhm.
I've talked with a few people about uh, performing other. Um, I'm performing Celtic rituals. Like this year, I'd like to do. I'd like to do a Samhain ritual, but I have another thing that I got to do that day, so probably won't be getting to it again this year. It
Oh,
is it's the one that I've been wanting to do for a while. but every Halloween something comes up.
Well, I'm sure that it will work and it will happen for you. I wish I lived closer or nearby. I'd love to join you guys for one of these one time. I'm sure it's awesome. But yeah, you're lucky, like to be able to have that kind of community where it's not frowned upon, that it's actually embraced. Um, I
And
think we
encouraged.
encouraged, yes. And we need more of that, we need I don't see a lot of it, where I'm at over here, and the climate is different, where I'm at. And you would think like, "Oh, hippie California, blah, blah, blah," they just embrace everything and take everything in. But no, there's a real, like, California culture that exists and its mindset too. So I'm, not conditioned to think that way, but I see a lot of it around where I'm at, and hopefully this is something I can do to like say, hey, 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 wait a minute here. Let's not look at what we have that is different. Let's start looking at the things that we have that we have in common. That's that's going to change things drastically,
Yeah.
I believe. Um, I like to keep these episodes around an hour, hour and a half, and we're coming up on that. Chase, so I'm gonna have you back again
All
because
right.
I feel like we scratched the surface of this and we didn't like deep dive into it. And I really want to deep dive because I feel something like in me really resonating with this. Um, and I'd love to get like some advice on moving forward, expanding it. What should I be looking for? What should I be looking out for? Pitfalls to avoid, this those kinds of things. So I'd love to have you on again if you're open to that.
Yeah,
Ok-
I'd love to come back.
Okay, right on. So Chase Clark, everybody. We only hung out you know, some years back during a ritual. Um, meeting you in person and stuff and vibing with you is cool. I know that online we haven't really kept uh, that that tide surfing that wave. I'm glad to be able to reconnect with you here. I feel like this just really opened up a channel for you and I to get to hang out more and talk more and bond some more, which I'm excited about. And you could be my guide into dipping into other waters.
Yeah.
I love that. Love that absolutely. Chase, you've been an amazing guest. I look forward to having you back again. And we don't have to, we can talk about other things too, other than synchronicity, but I would like to really get into it a little bit more than what we did. Um, I'm sorry I kept going off and not going off and going off, but it's it was relevant. To me, it was relevant.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's no problem. I have no issue going off on tangents.
Okay.
And honestly, they really weren't because they were all connected to synchronicity. And I would love to come back and talk more about it.
Absolutely. Let's go with one parting word for everybody. What would you say to the Norse heathen community right now about synchronicity? What is your end message for them right now, um, based on your own experiences and your personal beliefs?
Listen to whoever is speaking with you to you, whether that be in day to day life or in your private meditations. Always listen and follow so you can learn and grow.
Stay open, keep learning. Love it. Love it. Synchronicity is about tangents. Yes, it is, Sanford. Yes,
Yep.
it is. All right, Chase, if you'll stay with me just for a little bit longer. Everybody else, thank you so much for coming in, tuning in on this one. It's on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and so if it falls off Facebook and you want to come back and revisit this, feel free to find Meets in Midgard on YouTube. Chase also has a YouTube channel for gaming. Um, so we will uh, tune into that. Cody, I love that. Coexist or conquest. um, Cody, good to see you here. Ayla, Stanford, thank you guys for chiming in. I appreciate that. Chase, stick with me, and goodbye, everybody.